Vote blue no matter who is the con of all cons. For people who might be new to the show and you don't know what that is, vote blue no matter who is based on the idea of you have to vote for the lesser of two evils. I may not like the Democrats, I might not agree with them on everything, but the Republicans are way worse. They're so much more dangerous, so we just have to vote for the Democrats. Vote blue no matter who. No matter who the Democrat is, vote blue because they're better than the Republican. And this is incredibly convenient for the Democrats, who a lot of the times they're as corrupt as Republicans. They are as committed to serving the interests of their political donors, corporations, millionaires, billionaires, over what is best for their voters and their constituents, which is what they should be doing. This is a win-win for the Democrats. They get to be as corrupt as they want. They never have to change their policy positions and actually do anything to improve the lives of their constituents and actually give people a reason to vote for them, because they always have that convenient Republican conservative boogeyman to point to and to fearmonger and to scare people into voting for them, because the possibility of the Republicans winning an election is posed as this existential threat to the voters and to the country. So one of the big problems I have with all this vote blue no matter who nonsense is it boxes people into a corner and it leaves no room for independent thought or for people to question whether or not this is the best strategy or tactic to get whatever policy it is that's important to them. And everybody has a policy issue that's incredibly important to them, whether it's Medicare for all or ending the wars, free college, a living wage, whatever it is. I think that's incredibly toxic, and I think that is a big part of what is breeding this counterproductive and never-ending cycle of electing corporate Democrats who will do nothing to improve your life, and then them eventually losing to some Republicans who's also going to do nothing to improve your life. And then you end up electing some Democrats who aren't going to do anything to improve your life. Well, Kyle Kulinski from Secular Talk posted a video yesterday on his channel about the overwhelming majority of Democrats in the House and the majority of Democrats in the Senate voting against a measly 10% cut to the $740 billion annual Pentagon budget and using that money to fund social programs here in the United States during this unprecedented crisis. The majority of Democrats voted to blow $740 billion on illegal, immoral, endless wars that we're waging in countries across the world, around the world, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen. That money is going to be used to massacre innocent civilians, as we've been doing for decades at this point. And it's going to be used to prop up the military-industrial complex, the defense contractors who are huge political donors to the Democrats and to the Republicans. Raytheon, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, all these people who manufacture weapons and equipment for the military that they use in their endless wars. And in that video, Kyle goes off on the idea that you're going to tell people that they have to vote blue no matter who when the Democrats are doing this kind of shit. So I have a clip. I'm going to show it to you guys right now, and then we'll come back and break it down.
You can't get mad at people when they reject your vote blue no matter who shit, because this is Democrats being Republicans. That's what this is. This is Democrats being Republicans. So if you're mad at somebody because they don't want to vote for one of these characters, well, then what you're doing is you're defending Republican policies. You are acting in a pro-Republican fashion. That's what you're doing. So do we believe in something or do we not believe in anything? When you look at your values, how many of them are you willing to disregard? Are you willing to ignore 5% of your values, 10%, 50%, 80%? At what point can you comfortably say, you know what? All I'm doing is feeding this system which I claim to despise. So, take your blue no matter who crap and shove it, because you can't abandon everything you believe in service of some abstract, silly goal of let my team win. But if your team is doing the same thing as the other team, then are they really your team? Is that really your team? And you can't say, like, oh, this is purity nonsense, when these are not ancillary issues. These are core issues. These are core issues to what it means to be on the left. If you can't even agree to a 10% military cut, you're saying in no uncertain terms, I'm pro-imperialism. By the way, Ilhan Omar proposed something the other day to speed up the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Of course, I don't remember the exact number, but a giant number of Democrats were like, no, we're against that. So you don't want to get out of the war that we've been in for 19 years with no end in sight, no definition of victory. And you don't want to cut the military budget 10%. And you want people to shut up and vote blue no matter who? When apparently voting blue is voting red? That's just Republican stuff. That's all that is. I can't. The mindless drones who refuse to think about this thing in an objective way drive me crazy. They drive me crazy. What more would it take? Is there nothing that a Democrat could do to make you say, you know what? Not you. You're done. I'm done with you. Is there nothing? So they could do anything. But as long as they call themselves a Democrat, you're like, okay, rock on. Oh, man. All of that anger that's directed at lefties for saying, all right, you know what? I'm done. I check out of this system. All of that anger should be directed at the politicians who are voting the wrong way. It ain't on these voters to, change everything they believe in to pick a shitty politician and play the lesser evilism game. All that anger should be pointed at these politicians when they do these terrible votes.
All right, so I want to talk about the first point that Kyle makes and the way he frames it, which is for all the people who are mad at voters who don't want to vote blue no matter who don't want to vote for the Democrats because of their right-wing corporatist policies, you're effectively being mad at them for not supporting Republican conservative policies. And I love that he frames it like that, because usually the discussion around vote blue no matter who is, we're doing harm reduction and the other guys are way worse. So if you vote for these guys who are also beyond the pale and insanely corrupt, we're doing harm reduction. Well, that's a convenient way to frame it to justify voting for corrupt Democrats. But how about reframing it the way that Kyle does right there as, I'm not voting for Republican policies. The reason why I'm not voting for Republicans is because I disagree with their policies. Fuck everything else. I disagree with their policies on healthcare, criminal justice reform, foreign policy, workers' rights. I disagree with them. So why am I going to go vote for a Democrat who agrees with them on all those issues? Which brings me to the next point that he makes. How many of your values are you willing to just completely abandon and cave on? If you believe in incredibly important left-wing issues like Medicare for all, living wage, ending the wars, etc., and those are incredibly important to you, those are what drives you in your political view of the world. If the Democratic Party is committed to not only blocking the policies that are important to you, but doing the exact wrong policies, the exact opposite policies of what you want, at what point do you draw the line and say, okay, I'm not supporting this anymore because you don't agree with me on almost anything? So yeah, the Republicans are bad, but you're incredibly bad. You're inexcusably bad too, and I don't actually agree with you. So why am I voting for you? That's a question that needs to be asked. And the last point that Kyle makes in this clip is incredibly important, because if you're a political junkie and you follow this stuff closely on social media, the amount of time and energy that is spent from blue check Twitter and people in mainstream media, and even a large part of new media online, they spend an absurd amount of energy shaming voters, berating voters, trying to browbeat voters into abandoning everything that they care about, every policy issue that's important to them. 40,000 people in this country die every year because they couldn't afford basic health care. That was before this pandemic. That number is going to skyrocket. That number is zero in every other country. So 40,000 people are dying unnecessarily every single year in this country because we don't have a government-run healthcare system, because we have for-profit private insurance companies ripping us all off. You add that up over a 4-year term that a Democratic president would serve. That's 160,000 people dead because they couldn't afford basic healthcare in this country. Entirely unnecessary, didn't have to die. 160,000 people dead, and the impact that it has on their family. And that's just over a 4-year span. Why on earth do you think it's more productive or even moral for you to berate those people who see that could be them? It could easily be them who die because they couldn't afford basic health care. If they're rationing their insulin because they can't afford $600, $700, $800 a month to pay for insulin to treat their diabetes. That could be them in the 40,000 people who die every year because they can't afford basic health care. Or the people who have some sort of pain or symptoms and they don't want to go to the doctor because they can't afford it, and it turns out being cancer. That could be them, the people that you're berating to suck it up, shut up, get in line and vote for the Democrat, vote blue no matter who. That could be them who ends up dying from us not having Medicare for all, from us not having these incredibly basic, essential policies. Instead of doing that, which I find incredibly disgusting and shameful, can you imagine if all these people who are voter shaming the left, if they spent half that energy shaming Joe Biden, calling out Joe Biden for being corrupt, calling out Joe Biden for taking millions and millions and millions of dollars from the for-profit private health insurance companies, and letting that be the deciding factor in whether or not we get basic health care in this country. Why don't you call out Joe Biden for being so corrupt that he's willing to let millions of Americans die and be in financial ruin because he's more concerned with the profits of the private for-profit health insurance industry than he is with the health of the American people? Maybe with enough public pressure, the position that Joe Biden has, which is if Medicare for all passes the House and the Senate, I'll veto it, even as we are the global epicenter of a deadly pandemic. Maybe if there was enough public pressure, if there was enough people in mainstream media and new media on his ass about it, maybe that'll be an untenable position, and maybe he'd be forced into backing Medicare for all. But instead, they have this whole galaxy brain theory of indefinite harm reduction till the end of time, vote blue no matter who, at least it's not the Republicans, to the end of time, and have absolutely no plan on how to or strategy or any thought of how we'd actually get the policies that we want, if that's what we're going to do. So I find the idea of vote blue no matter who to be nonsensical in so many ways that I just cannot even fit it into this video. I'd have to do a series to adequately get across my disdain with that phrase and the meaning behind it. So anybody who's still telling people vote blue no matter who, you have to vote for the Democrats, you have to vote for Joe Biden, tell whoever's telling you to do all of that, or if you have that thought yourself, ask the question, okay, so then when do we ever get what we want? Because they've been saying this, vote blue no matter who. They've been saying vote for the lesser of two evils. They've been saying the Republicans are so bad, so you have to vote for the Democrats even if you don't agree with them. They've been saying this since Clinton. And the Democratic Party continues to get more right-wing, more corporatist, more corrupt, and they continue to put the interest over their political donors, the billionaires, the millionaires, the corporations, over the interest of the regular working class people in this country. So what has this vote blue no matter who gotten us to this point? Not a goddamn thing. And anybody who's still saying it, like I said, I would love to know what's the long-term plan here. What's the long-term strategy of how do we actually get Medicare for all? How do we actually end the wars? How do we actually get living wage and workers' rights and mandatory paid vacation days? How do we get those things if your only suggestion is to just vote for the Democrats as they are actively fucking us over?